Hello, everyone. It's Brenda, and I'm back again with another episode of the Three Uniques podcast. Today, I have on Stephanie Johnston. Hi, Steph. How are you doing today?
Hi, I'm really good. Thanks for having me.
It's so good to have you. So everyone knows, I've known Steph for a number of years, and she is on this, well, I don't want to say new path, but it's definitely an encore path, right? Like there's been
hmm
a shift, and so we'll talk about that. So Steph is a certified life and health coach. She's also the podcast host of Stepping to the Edge. And Steph, you're in Ontario. Whereabouts in Ontario, just for our listeners?
Yeah, so I'm Southwest Ontario. So I'm just outside Hamilton, so like an hour outside Toronto.
Nice. Okay.
Yeah.
So, as I mentioned, Steph, you and I have known each other for years. Got ourselves
Mm.
started off in kind of our careers, probably maybe a little bit of a different entry point, but definitely started off in retail apparel. Spent a lot of time together at the Gap, growing stores, growing ourselves as leaders. You've moved into other retail career paths. I know you worked with Levi's for a number of years.
Yep.
What other organizations did you work with?
Yeah, so I was with, it's interesting, when you think about the loyalty in a career, and I
Mhm.
don't know, I think some people still have that longevity with companies, but you don't see it as often anymore. So I was 16 years with Gap Inc., which is wild.
Yeah,
I went,
I was
I
14 and
went
a half. Yeah.
Yeah. And at that time it wasn't unusual, right? Like when we were with Gap at that point, that
They were
wasn't
already,
uncommon, right?
yeah.
That wasn't
Even in Gap,
uncommon.
like in my early days, there were already lifers, like people that have been
Yeah.
there for 20, 25 years when maybe I was like 5, 7 years. I was like, wow, okay.
Yeah, absolutely. And so I had the unique privilege while I was there to work for two of the brands under the umbrella. So I worked for Gap, I went
Mhm.
to Old Navy, and then I came back to Gap. So even though I was with the same company, it always felt like there was change, there was transformation, there was
Mhm.
growth that was happening. When I left the Gap, I went to American Eagle. I was actually there a year to the day, which
Yeah.
was not planned,
Mhm.
but then had the opportunity to come into Levi's. And so I went into Levi's. I was there 9 years. So yeah, 25, 26 years of retail spanning, I mean, two really big companies. So yeah, it's been an exciting time.
And talk to us about the pivot into health and life coaching. When did that
Yeah.
happen for you? And kind of why did you go down that road?
Yeah. So 2020 is when I made the pivot. And the journey and the road to that pivot probably started back in 2018. So in 2018, I was diagnosed with cancer.
Mhm.
And in that moment, and I'll share for those that are listening, I'm healthy 5 years out. I joke that I'm in a long term relationship with my oncologist, but we have a planned breakup for 2024. So
Oh,
I'm,
awesome.
yeah, so I am good to go.
Yeah.
But it was a real sort of light bulb moment for me, as many people will share having that experience and having somebody tell you that you have cancer. And so at that point in 2018, I really started to look at like, where am I in my health? What am I prioritizing? I was working 60 hours a week. I was traveling 3 weeks of the month. I had loyalty with airlines, hotels. I mean, you name it. I
Mhm.
was on planes, trains, and automobiles most of the month. And so I was away a lot. And what that does to your health is you're eating in airports, you're eating on the go, you're eating in your car,
Yeah.
drive throughs, all of those things. So I wasn't making great choices. And so I really started to recognize that and sort of set myself on the path. Now, I will say it wasn't like this immediate like 180-degree turn for me. I know some people can receive that sort of news and be like, bam, I'm going to change everything. For
Mhm.
me, it was more progressive. As I moved into 2020, January of 2020, my role with Levi's was eliminated. And it was a really interesting experience because as I was walking into that meeting,
Right.
I knew it was coming. You just have an intuitive gut feeling. I'd been in the industry long enough. I'd been on the other side of the table. So
Right.
I knew what the conversation would look like. I knew what to expect and walked into that and walked out of that meeting surprisingly feeling about 20 pounds lighter and realized that I had been carrying such an incredible amount of stress
Mhm.
and just this overwhelm in my body. And I didn't recognize how that was showing up in my physical health. And I was burnt out. The bottom line was I was 100% burnt out. I didn't realize how far along I was. I said to my husband at that time when I came home, I'm like, I'm going to take a couple of months off. I'm going to, just rest and like get things together and figure out what I want to do. He laughed. I literally
Okay.
remember him saying to me, like, a couple of months. I think you're going to need more than a couple of months to
Oh,
recover.
wow. Okay.
Yeah. So bless his heart for recognizing that I was going to need more time than that. And then
Mhm.
the pandemic hit.
Okay.
And
So
so,
I was, yeah, it was just, you said
mhm,
2020. I didn't catch whether or not it was like before the pandemic. So it was actually probably really good timing from that standpoint, right? Because
perfect.
retail obviously had a slowdown with things shutting down. You would have had the online business, but that would have definitely affected your retail in-store position anyway. So
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the effects would have been significant for
mhm.
sure.
Yeah.
And just that the additional stress. I mean, I was already at a place of burnout, and I can now, I'm in conversations and I can now speak with leaders who led retail businesses during that time, and the level of stress they underwent, the trauma is
Mhm.
significant. And so I'm really grateful of the timing that I was able to just take that space. And so that couple of months that I was going to take off turned into almost a 2-year sabbatical.
Okay.
And over the course of that time, I worked with a coach, really trying to figure out what was my next move. Did I want to go back into retail? Where was I sort of wanting to head? And what I realized was I fell in love with coaching. I
Mm.
fell in love with being coached. And I realized that through my retail career, I had always been coaching. I
Yeah.
loved being in those conversations. I loved supporting people and empowering them.
Mm.
And so I went through, and during that time off, I did my certification and became a certified health and life coach.
Amazing. So,
Yeah.
um, and now you're operating your health and life coaching business. And
Yep.
who are you specifically working with and how do you support them?
Yeah. So I work with women predominantly, but open to humans. But predominantly I work with women just from my personal experience, right? I can relate to a woman who is a mom and who is married. And so managing that corporate life as well as being a parent and trying to balance all of those things that we have, all those competing priorities. So the women that I have been working with are on the edge of burnout. They're really identifying for themselves the level of stress and overwhelm and burnout that they are carrying. And I really work with them to identify ways that they can bring more health into their lives, ways that they can bring more joy into their life, more fulfillment into their life. What I discovered for myself was I was always sort of chasing this goal. And in chasing these goals, believing that when I achieved the goal, the desired feeling was going to be there. Like I was
Right.
going to get that feeling out of that goal. But what I didn't understand was I could create that feeling on the way to the goal. I
Yeah. Like
love a
right
good
now,
goal, right?
right
But you
now.
can
Yeah.
create it right now. And so working with women to really, for them to identify how do you desire to feel right now? And
Hmm.
how are you going to create that for yourself?
And so some of the things you talk about, following you on Instagram and seeing your messages, you always talk about like sort of healthy choices and like an alignment around your goals. What does that look like? And especially with like your health journey that you've shared with us. So if we want to do more of that, if we want to have more goals that are helping our support our health and our wellness, what would that look like?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, such a powerful topic, right? And health can mean so much to different people. And I think we all have a very unique perspective on it. But when I look at health, I'm looking at the full spectrum. I'm looking at physical, emotional,
Mm.
spiritual. And when I think about health, one of the things that comes to mind for me, first and foremost, and one of the things that I disregarded was boundaries. I
Mm.
had no boundaries when I was working 60 hours a week.
Yeah.
And so when I think about boundaries, it can be as simple as setting time in your calendar for an actual lunch, like
Mhm.
20 minutes. Right. That's healthy digestion. That allows you to rest. It allows your body to rest. You can move, from sympathetic to parasympathetic nervous system. And it really is supportive to the body. And it really does come down to that 20 minutes of rest and that 20-minute block in your calendar.
Right. Yeah. Well, again, you and I are sort of cut from the same cloth, no boundaries, had to learn how to set boundaries with people, time, even past beliefs that I had about myself or, goals, like in relation to goals that I would have. It's like, well, I would not do these goals because I just knew that I wasn't I wasn't set up from a value system or from a belief system that I could actually accomplish those goals. So denying myself, even when it came to my health, it's like, yeah, I'd love to get healthy, but this is the reality of my situation right now. It was always sort of like that underlying but, and it always related back to boundaries, not saying no to things, saying yes to the travel schedule, saying yes to the meeting schedule, whatever that looked like, walkthroughs.
Yeah, I mean, I am a recovering perfectionist
Yeah.
and a people pleaser, right? I think that's why I've always been so great in retail. I'm a
Right.
great person to have work for you because I am that perfectionist, that people pleaser. I'm recovering from all of those things.
Right.
And in that was very unlikely to say no to somebody,
Mm,
right? Oh, there's a meeting at this time, or I have this deadline, or this project needs to be submitted. Okay,
okay.
right?
Yeah.
Versus like setting that time and prioritizing my own health. It's
Mhm.
interesting too that you say about goals with health, because one of the ones that I have really been navigating is I've gotten into strength training. And so, for a woman of my age,
Yeah.
strength training is such an important thing for us. But I had this limiting belief that like I had to be this like super buff person in order to do weight
Just
training
to start.
to start, right? And I'm
Yeah.
like, but if you don't start, you never get
You never
there,
got it. Yeah. It's like,
right?
yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's those elements where it's like just doing things that bring you joy as well in movement and in health. I think that has also been a big piece for me, is really recognizing like, why do I work out? I work out because when I work out, I feel good. It creates energy for me, and
Mm.
that energy sustains me throughout the day. So it's really supportive to the rest of my day and choosing activities that I enjoy.
I love that, especially for women midlife, where, yeah, so strength training is really important, obviously, for bone density, osteoporosis prevention, all those things. But then also the fact that we're shifting so many hormones in our body, going through perimenopause, menopause. It's like, how can we, like those reliable ways that we had before in our 20s and 30s, like, this was famous in retail too, having pop machines in the back or just close to the food court to, swig back a Diet Coke for that instant energy boost. Well, I can't be doing that now. The sugar just stays on my body. It
Mhm.
doesn't, my metabolism is lower. So it doesn't just like fluff off anymore after working, like those 60-hour work weeks. But I think the other thing is that like energy looks different as you go through midlife. It doesn't necessarily mean that we have less energy. We just have to tap into it from different sources.
Absolutely.
So I love the fact that you're looking at that, and just, even the goal around your health doesn't have to be, well, it's to be skinny. It's more like, how can I get more energy? How can I feel rested when I actually sleep at night? I can sleep for 8 hours consistently versus waking up in the middle of the night periodically.
Yeah, it
And
doesn't
then,
have to be about working out to a point of like exhaustion, right?
yeah,
That's not what I am advocating for. And in some cases for women, depending on where they're at, and as we're talking about like burnout and stress and overwhelm, something easy like yoga. Do you know
mm,
what I mean? And not to say that yoga is easy, because it's not, but you can ease into it, right? You can allow your body the space, which can be really fulfilling. So I think it's really choosing those activities that are best suited for where you're at.
and then you talk a lot about cultivating joy, like really from
Mhm.
an intentional place.
Yep.
Because I think sometimes people are like, well, if I do this, this, it equals joy. Versus I think you come at it, correct me if I'm wrong, that I'm going to again set this intention, to be joyful. And then that cultivates joy for me. I don't know. It's just splitting, maybe splitting hairs slightly, but like, tell us a little bit more about that.
Yeah. So I went through this big sort of moment where I was able to determine that there's joy and there's happiness, right? And happiness for me is defined as external. It's that external validation, which again, people pleaser, right?
Right.
Always seeking that validation,
Yeah.
versus joy, which I feel is really internal. And I am intentional about creating joy, and I'm intentional about identifying what brings me joy. And so as I educate and I teach on joy, I really talk to multiple pillars around what creates joy. And they can be different for different people, but ones that I'll share: connection and community. Connection is one of my values. I know you speak to values all the time. It's one of my top two values. And I know that when I am in connection with somebody, even a conversation like this, or when I'm working with a client one on one, that connection, I love being in the deep conversation, in the real conversation. That lights me up. that brings me joy. So I make space for that in my calendar, whether that is spending time with a girlfriend over a cup of coffee or a glass of wine, whether it is being on podcasts like this, these things that create joy for me, I make space for them and I'm really intentional around them. The other one that's really important to me is generosity. So generosity is also one of my values. And for me, generosity shows up in giving back and how I activate that within my community. So I'm very active in my community, participating in different giving back activities. I work with an organization called Neighbor to Neighbor here in Hamilton, and they really serve an underserved population. And it's so amazing to be in their kitchen and prepare meals that families come and pick up. And it's so joyful to be part of that. And I know community and giving back is something that's really important to you too. So those are the things that I really make space for in my calendar. And I'm really intentional about creating that joy.
So if you were able to, first of all, thanks for sharing that. Because I think it's just to take a pause there and just sort of like hear it back in your head. But if you were to go back to your 25-year-old 30 self, knowing what you know now, what would be a piece of advice that you would give to her, to you?
Oh, I'd hug her. My 25-year-old self just bought herself a house.
Okay.
So she is dealing for the first time with all of that.
Mhm.
And what I would say to her is prioritize experience over stuff. I
Mhm.
think at that point in my life, I was in the moment of a home and the desire to fill the home with things. And I would really encourage her to just make time and space for experiences
Mhm.
and to really take time to be present. There were so
Right.
many cool moments that I can look back on at that time in my life that I think I wasn't fully present for.
Mm.
They just sort of, they came and they happened, whether that was the first promotion at work, you get that first promotion and you're going to be a store manager. And how cool is that? And I remember like, that is the coolest thing ever. And it's something that people work towards. And
Yeah.
in that moment, I went into action mode. Like, where's
Uh,
the store? What do I need to do? Who do I need to
yeah.
call? What are the things? Versus like just taking 5 seconds and being like, I worked my butt off for that. And how cool is that?
Yeah.
Right? Like,
I
how
look,
cool is that?
again, similar past. I like think back to like when I got promoted to store manager, I was also opening a store at the same time. So it was kind of like I was going in as the associate. For some reason, the store manager wasn't going to be the store manager. And my DM said to me, okay, you're now the store manager. And it's like, go finish opening like the, 20,000 boxes or whatever that came that day. And I was like, okay, great. I had no time. It was just kind of
Yeah.
like, you're the store manager, go. And we're opening in 5 days. And
Yeah.
we'll deal with it later. And then it was just back to school, holiday, so that's a great example. Yeah, there's just so many things. And like the things that you just mentioned don't cost anything either.
Yeah.
Be
That's the really beautiful
present,
part.
be present, give a hug, the things that are like really essential, the things that are really valuable for us don't cost anything really.
Yeah, it's those moments, those phone calls with a friend or a family member that
Mhm.
now you look back on and maybe that family member's not with us anymore. And so what an honor to be present in that moment with that family member. Like I think about it now. I'm really intentional around it now with my kids. I have two teenagers, one who's in first year university, the other one's in high school. My oldest is home for spring break. And so I'm really intentional around like, what can we do to create these little memories? And how can I be really present in these small conversations, whether it's just sitting at dinner or, whether it's a family movie night. And I find myself, family movie night was something we introduced during the pandemic to like pass the time.
Right.
And we've just continued with. But what I love is that we'll be sitting there and everybody's watching a movie and it's really quiet and it's just the movie. But I find myself not even watching the movie. I'm just looking at them and just kind of like sinking into like, how cool is this?
Yeah. Awesome. Okay, so you're here today to share your three uniques with us. I don't want to forget
Yes.
this. And you did the quiz, you
Yeah.
downloaded the workbook, which is awesome. So I'd love to hear what makes you unique. What did you discover?
Yeah. So I have to say, before I share my three uniques, this is the coolest experience. And I would say for anybody who's listening, if you haven't downloaded this workbook, I mean, I am old school. I love to print. I love to write. I was telling you this before we started. Like, I had so much fun going through this workbook. So thank you for creating it because it's such a gift. It's really amazing. I
Oh,
loved it.
thanks for the plug. I appreciate that.
Yeah, of
Yeah.
course. Okay, so my three uniques. So I'll share them and I'll give a little bit of insight. So I am a connector.
Mhm.
I believe in magic,
Mm.
and I am as resilient. I am resilient AF. I don't know
Okay.
what kind of language you use on your podcast. So I'm going to keep it there. But
It's all
um,
good.
so those are the three for me. And connection, I've mentioned a couple of times. It's one of my values. I hold it really close to my heart. It's something that is so important to me. And I see that come up in my personal life. I see that come up in my businesses and in my corporate life. There's just this beautiful trust and relationship that comes through connection. And as I said, I want to be here in the deep conversation. I want to be here for that. So that's one. The first one is connection. The second one, I believe in magic.
Mm.
I chose magic. It's interesting. I chose magic as my word of the year for 2023, and it
Okay.
continues to come up for me. And when I think about I believe in magic, for me, that is the absolute trust and faith that the universe has my back.
Mm.
I have, and this kind of ties into resilience as well. So I'll tie the two of them together about being resilient. But there are experiences that I have been through in my professional career and my personal life, a cancer diagnosis, having my role eliminated,
Mm.
going through the pandemic. There are so many things that all of us probably can share or have a commonality in. And for me, I will go through those experiences and still believe that there's magic on the other side of it. There is something, I'm on the path to something really cool and really great. And so those are the three uniques that I carry with me.
And how or who has been an influence with you in sort of cultivating that magic, that belief? Is that just something
Mm.
that you've just like drummed up yourself, like over time? It's like there's just evidence and now your brain just totally believes it to be true? Or did someone like instill that in you and at a young age?
Yeah, I think I'll definitely credit that to my parents. One of my parents' mantras growing up was believe and achieve.
Okay.
Always. So if there was, if they were sending a card to congratulate me on a promotion at work, or whether it was, something that happened away at school or whatever that was, it was always believe and achieve. And, if you had that belief in yourself, you could achieve what you desired. And then I will say over the last couple of years, it's been the experience of working with a coach. It's that experience has really opened my eyes to acknowledging my own unique qualities, but also acknowledging the experiences that I've had and recognizing the magic in those moments and in those experiences.
I think that's essential. A lot of like reflection work, right? Being able to pull out those experiences, which is, kind of the cornerstone of the work that I do within the three uniques, so that we appreciate those experiences and that we know that we actually have the capability and capacity to create even more experiences. Because sometimes we just forget, right? We tune them out or we brush them off. Or again, that perfection, people pleasing. It's like, well, I've just got to keep going further, 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 versus like there's already so many great experiences that you can, pay homage to and acknowledgement with.
Yeah, it's acknowledging all of that experience that we've been through in those moments and, whether they were situations that were trying and were difficult, it's, what was the learning that came out of it? And that learning can often be the magic.
Steph, has there been something in the last couple of years that when you think about your uniques where you've invested the time, money, effort into, having more alignment with them in your life that's like really sort of paid off or starting to pay off, like you're starting to see that happen?
Yeah, I would say the last 2 years have been a huge transformation for me. Definitely that, taking that break from retail, I'm back in retail now. So, I like to say I'm the corporate queen, also an entrepreneur and a coach. I love having my hand in all of the many pots. And so the last 2 years has really opened my eyes to possibility and the idea that I can be both. I think that the most pivotal experience, as I've said, is working with a coach. My
Mhm.
coach really opened my eyes and kind of held a mirror up to me, which I know we do as coaches, but
Mhm.
having that mirror really held up to me to show me what I'm capable of, what is possible for me, and really allowed me to start dreaming really big. I think prior to that, my dreams had really been retail focused. I was a DM, then I was
Yeah.
a regional. What's the next? Like I was on a very linear path.
Mhm.
And this last 2 years has really opened up almost a spider web, I would say, of possibility and opportunity. And that investment of time for myself, allowing myself the time and the space to take that time off. That's not easy. I'll acknowledge that taking that much time off work is not easy financially or, just feeling like you needed to be productive all the time.
Yeah.
Um, but that's been a huge shift for me.
Love it. Um, where can people find you, work with you?
Yeah, absolutely. So, Instagram is one of my favorite places to hang out. I love to play on Instagram. You can find me at Stepping to the Edge. Or you can head over to my website, www.steppingtotheedge.com. On there, if you go into the work with me, you can see the different elements and ways that we can work together. I offer one-on-one coaching, and I actually just launched a new opportunity to work with me, which is Voxer coaching.
Mhm.
So for anybody that's not familiar, Voxer is just like a walkie-talkie type app, but it is a 30-day program, and it's really like having a coach in your back pocket for those
Fun.
individuals who are really busy and can't lock down a specific time, but really want to work towards a goal. This is a great way to do it on the go.
Love it. And my last question for you, Steph, is if I was to give you a billboard and you could put anything on it and it could be anywhere in the world, what would it say and where would it be?
Oh, wow. Um, Billboard, where would it be? New York City.
Okay.
One of my favorites. I mean,
Mhm.
it's New York City. If you're going to put a billboard up, you just
Yeah.
might as well do it in both. I just have visions of it being lit up and it's like sparkly. And
Okay.
that
So
just feels
Times
like,
Square.
yeah,
Times Square.
yeah, total
Yeah.
Times Square moment, like totally sparkly, all the lights, all the glitter.
Mhm.
And what would it say? Oh, believe and achieve. Yeah, I'm going to carry that one forward.
Okay, great. Thanks, Steph, for being on today. It's been awesome hearing about your three uniques and what you're up to and where people can find you. I'm excited to see what happens for you.
Thank you so much. This has been so fun. I'm so grateful to have been a guest. Thank you.
And for everyone tuning in, I always say this at the end of the podcast. Remember, there's 8 billion people on this planet and somebody needs what you've got. Get out there and share your three uniques.